What can you learn from an Army combat medic about safety? Welcome to Construction Genius. This is Eric, and my guest today is Rod Courtney. He served as an Army combat medic from 1990 to 1998, and he's been a certified safety technician for 25 years. He became a certified utility safety professional in 2019. He's a highly respected safety culture consultant, author, speaker, and he has a book called The 8 Habits of Highly Effective Safety Culture, and that is what we're going to be talking about here today on Construction Genius. So let's dive right in. All things safety. It's an hour-long conversation. There's tons of great content here. If you want to transform the safety culture in your organization, you are in the right place on today's Construction Genius episode. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Rod, welcome to Construction Genius. My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
You didn't start your career in construction. Can you tell us a little bit about your career arc?
Yeah, so I graduated high school, and I wasn't a good enough baseball player to go to college, so I decided I had to do something, either go in the military or work at the Shell station. So I chose the military. I went in as an Army medic. I was a combat medic for the 24th Infantry Division, and I was stationed at Fort Stewart. I stayed there for 4 years. I got out of the military and went in the reserves. And during my reserve time, I worked as a correctional officer. Contrary to popular belief, I was not an inmate. I was a correctional officer, I promise. And which was honestly the worst job I ever had, Eric. Horrible job. But it gave me a chance to work the Olympics in Atlanta back in '96, which that was really, really cool. And after the Olympics, I went to the police academy in Savannah, Georgia, and I became a patrol officer. And I did that for a few years and decided to move back home to Louisiana. Came home with the intentions of being a state trooper. I had to wait a few months before I could apply. So a buddy of mine said that there was a scaffold company hiring scaffold builders in Baton Rouge, so I could go work some turnarounds. So I went down like any good military guy with a shirt and tie on and a nice fresh copy of my resume, and turned it in to be a scaffold builder. And they looked at me like I was crazy. So and he asked me then, he said, what do you know about safety? I said, well, now that you mention it, that's pretty much all I've ever done. So he introduced me to Tommy Graham, and that's who the book I wrote, that's who it's dedicated to, is Mr. Tommy.
That's interesting. So tell me about, so in your experience as a combat medic, and also in your experience as a law enforcement officer, what are some fundamental principles of safety that apply across a variety of different industries?
Well, at the end of the day, we have to remember one thing, and this is something that I wasn't taught until many years later, but we have to remember, no matter what type of safety we're doing, people are going to make mistakes. Errors are going to occur. It doesn't matter how much you train somebody, how dedicated they are, how hard they try. We will never stop that. So, I didn't learn that till many years later, and start to apply that in a safety capacity. But if you look back at the time I spent in the military, even the time in law enforcement, now looking back on that and applying that, knowing that people are going to make errors, they're going to make mistakes, I see now how we could have done that so much better. And if you look at the training that the military goes through today, they actually use that. And it's called a human performance approach to safety and to what's human and operational organizational performance. And the military has actually started to use that many years ago. And now we're using it in construction safety.
So tell me, what do you think are the root causes of why people make mistakes?
Well, first of all, we're human. And when I say mistake, I mean an error, something that's not intentional. I mean, we made errors, you and I, all day today. And, I can't count how many times. When I was preparing to be on your podcast, I went to plug my headphones in, and it's got a little USB plug on the end of it. And when I went to plug it in, guess what? It didn't fit. So I had to flip it over and try to do it again. It didn't fit again. I had to flip it over again and plug it in. As minor as that sounds, that's an error. And the truth is, errors are predictable. We can actually calculate how many errors a given job, a given profession will make in an hour. Um, if we have to understand we're never going to stop them. So errors are predictable, but we have to know that as long as we deal with human beings, errors will always occur. The idea now in safety is we can actually build an environment around them where it's okay to make errors. It's okay to fail as long as we send you home at the end of the day, as long as you fail and fail safely, then that's building capacity. And that's kind of the direction that we're going now.
So tell me this idea of human performance approach. Define that for us a little bit. Give us some more insights there, please.
Okay, so for many years, since I started in safety, even in the military, we were doing what was called a behavior-based approach to safety. And behavior-based safety is based off of a study done by a gentleman named H.W. Heinrich, and he did it back in the early 30s. He was an insurance investigator for Travelers Insurance, and he went around the country, and he took 12,000 closed accident cases, and he went around interviewing people. At the end of his study, he published that 88% of all accidents are due to unsafe acts or unsafe behaviors. And if we were to focus on those unsafe behaviors, we could ultimately stop the significant injuries and fatalities. The data itself is flawed because, if you think this was done in the 30s, there was a very tough time for our country. We're in the middle of the Great Depression. Jobs are hard to come by. If you have a job and you're providing for your family, you don't want to lose that job. And now here I come, an insurance investigator, and I say, hey, Eric, I need you to come to the office and talk to me. And they send you to the office and they sit you down. And I say, okay, I'm with Travelers Insurance, Eric. I understand you had an employee that was injured, a few months back. Can you tell me about it? And of course, you kind of run through it. And ultimately, though, I'm going to ask you, whose fault was it? Why did that happen? What do you think you're going to tell me? Are you going to say, oh, well, we probably should have provided more training or we should have done this? No, you wouldn't have got that whole sentence out of your mouth before they fired you. So, of course, they told him, oh, no, it's the employee's fault. It's not our fault. They did something wrong. They weren't paying attention to their surroundings or whatever it was. Ultimately, 88% said it was the employee's fault. And so that's how the data was originally collected. That was almost 100 years ago. And that data has never been able to be duplicated, ever. But here we start now in the early 90s when Ford Motor Company was the first company to start a behavior-based program. After that, DuPont was the first one to sell a behavior-based program called the DuPont Stop program. Now, I'm not saying there was anything bad or bad intentions. It was just bad information. So they implemented that, and we've been doing behavior-based type safety ever since. We go out onto the job sites and we try to find employees doing things wrong. They're in the wrong body position. They have their hands in pinch points. They're not wearing the PPE. Whatever it is, we're trying to find a person doing something wrong. Well, that is behavior-based approach. A human performance approach is where we find they're called SIF, significant injury and fatalities. There are precursors to those. There's quite a few of them, but instead of me going out with your employees and trying to find them not wearing their protective equipment or standing in an awkward position, I'm going to go out and I'm going to look for these significant injury and fatality precursors. and they're very in depth, I guess. And but you go out and you look for these things, and when you can identify the precursors to a significant injury, now you can take that information, and as long as you're tracking and trending things properly, you can actually create an environment where your employees can fail safely. If you think about stock car racing, it's a great example. So, about 22 years ago, there was a very famous race car driver that was coming around turn 4 at Daytona, and he hit the wall and he died. And most people know who that was, right? That was Dale Earnhardt Sr. And he was very famous, and it was a very hard time for the sport. But I asked this question all over the country. I say, can you tell me who the last person was to die in a stock car race? And people are usually just looking around at each other. And the fact is, it was Dale Earnhardt Sr. 22 years ago. So in 22 years, do you think that sport's gotten more or less dangerous? Obviously, it's more dangerous. Those cars are faster for sure. But what NASCAR has figured out is that their employees, their drivers, will make errors. They wreck every single week, but they allow them to wreck. They've created environments around them where it's okay for them to wreck because they're going to wreck and wreck safely. They're going to still walk away from it. If we can take that same mentality and create an environment in a construction world where our employees can do the same thing, we will still have incidents, but they just go home at the end of the day. They don't have a significant injury or fatality. And so that's the human performance approach versus the behavior-based approach.
Okay, so based on your experience in the industry, you've developed 8 habits of highly effective safety cultures, and you've published a book on that. So I'd like to spend some time just diving into those habits. And your first one is stop making safety a priority. It should be a value. Can you
Correct.
explain how shifting from safety as a priority to safety as a value can fundamentally change an organization's approach to safety management?
Absolutely. So first of all, I hear all the time, oh, that's just a play on words, Rod. What, because I asked the question, hey, everybody, is safety a priority with your company? And they all, more times than not say, oh, yeah, absolutely. And then I tell them how, well, then stop making it a priority. We need to make it a value. And inevitably, they look at me like, well, that's what I meant. See, the first habit is very simple, but that's part of it, right? So you have to understand that this is a process. It's a system, and it's a systematic process to change a culture. The first step, the first habit is stop making, referring to, or treating safety as a priority. Let's start referring to it as a value. And here's the difference. So you and I, so my office is 50 miles from my house. It takes me 1 hour to get to work. If I have to be there at 7 a.m., my alarm goes off here at 4:45 in the morning. That's 2 hours and 45 minutes to make that drive. I have plenty of time built in there to do things like brush my teeth, to take a shower and eat breakfast or drink coffee or whatever it is I want to do. And everybody has that. You do it. Everybody that's watching right now, they do it as well. They have time built in for their priorities. But the thing is, if tomorrow I wake up late, and we've all done that, but I have to get to work, it's really important I be there on time today, I'm going to adjust my priorities. I'm not going to take a shower. I'm not going to eat breakfast. I'm not going to have time to sit and have coffee, whatever it is. I'm going to do what I have to do, get out of this house, get in my vehicle and start driving. And the truth is, even people like me, I'm a dedicated safety professional. But guess what? I'm probably going to break a few safety rules on the drive in, right? The speed limit says it's 70, but Eric, I got places to be, all right? This is important. I got to hurry up. So I'm going to break that speed limit. I'm going to break rules in order to get there because my priorities are to do that. Now, there's one thing though that we've all had the same answer for it. It's what will you never leave your house before you do? And usually when I ask that, people kind of start looking up at the ceiling, asking, I don't know what. It's getting dressed, and when you think about it, that's kind of funny, Of course, I've never been so late for something that I showed up naked. I hope you haven't either, right? Maybe in a bad dream, okay? But the truth is, getting dressed is not a priority, right? Getting dressed is a value. The fact is, values don't change. So when we start talking about safety as a value, it's purposely a simple first step. We just change the terminology. We start referring to it and treating it as a value versus a priority. It makes it a simple transition from the old way we used to do things to, hey guys, we're about to start doing things differently. And so that's the very first step, is make it a value.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good illustration about getting dressed before you go out of the house, and the difference between a priority and a value. Your second habit is to make it safe to raise concerns. Um, some people might say, if I'm allowing my employees to raise concerns all the time, it's going to slow down processes and lead to inefficiencies. How do you address that?
So the truth is, so I'm not suggesting that. As a matter of fact, just the opposite of, stop work every time something minor is occurring, or every near miss happens, or every good catch occurs. Um, what I'm saying is, right now, no, you've been in construction for many years. I've been doing this for quite a few years, and a lot of your listeners have as well. How many times have any of us stood up in front of a group of people and said, okay, everybody, I don't want you to report everything today? Of course, we never say that. We always, as long as I've been doing this, have always said to the masses anyway, we want you to report everything. Let us know about everything. Every plant orientation you go to, every job site orientation, that's part of it, right? Stop work authority, and if you see something, say something, and all that stuff. And we've been preaching it for years. The problem is the employees don't believe that's what we really mean. Their perception, because of how they've been conditioned, is they have to say that in these meetings. But when we really get out there, it's different. We're not going to report the minor stuff. We're only going to report the things that absolutely have to be reported, the significant injuries, the fatalities, the major property damages, and that kind of stuff. If we can, and honestly, this is, out of all habits, this is the hardest one to accomplish. It does take the longest, because we are literally have to change the perceptions that our employees currently have, and let them know we truly want everything reported. Now, something minor occurs. Let's say it's a slip on a ladder. Nobody's hurt, but it occurred. Does that mean you stop the job and go start reporting it right now? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. What I'm saying is that we need to just make sure we let someone know that happened. But there's a lot of technology out there we can use, that you could report it instantly. There's everything from artificial intelligence to wearables to all that. But let's say you don't have that. Just wait till your next break, and let somebody know that it happened. Now, obviously, if it's significant, if there's property damage or there's something more than just a near miss, we would have stopped that anyway. And obviously, you still stop that and report it. But it's the minor things that I'm telling you, if anybody out there believes that every near miss and every good catch is actually getting reported, you're wrong. No, they're not. Because I used to do that. I've had minor incidents on jobs before. As a safety professional, I didn't tell anybody about it. And I know, and if we all, just talk about the elephant in the room for a minute, take the blinders off. Your employees are not reporting everything, but we want them to. We tell them to, but we put blinders on and they don't. So instead of rewarding for lack of accidents, right? Hey, if you have 0 incidents for the week or the month or the year, we'll give everybody a reward. Instead of doing that, because all you're doing is creating a culture then where people want to hide things, how about do the same thing, but do it because people have reported these small things to you. Because later on in the book, we're going to talk about focusing left of zero. And when you have that information, when I have true, unbiased data, all the data though, not just the serious stuff, but everything, when I put that into a system, I can actually see an accident before it happens.
Can you share a success story of a company that excelled in creating an environment where employees feel safe to raise safety concerns?
The company that I currently work for. So I've again been doing this years. Back in 2019, I had been running my own company for a while. A company called Empirical called me, asked if I'd be interested in interviewing for their. It was the HSE manager at the time. Said sure. So I went and interviewed, and come to find out, they didn't have anything. They were a relatively good sized company. You're looking at 280 or so people in this company by then, and they literally had a 3-ring binder. That was their whole safety program, and nobody to even implement that. So they gave me carte blanche, and the way it was given to me was I went and sat down in the president's office. His name is Matthew Sachs, and Matthew takes this 3-ring binder off the shelf behind him, and he sits it on the desk. And I always joke with him now, and I say, when you sat it down, there was a big dust plume that came up. I mean, it really wasn't, but I give him a hard time. And he said, what do you think about our safety program? And I said, well, to be honest, that's a safety manual. It's not really a program, but I have read through it, and you're compliant. He said, well, we bought it. We bought it off the internet, and we bought it in order to be compliant. And this was his statement to me. I'm tired of being compliant, Rod. I want to be excellent. Can you do that for us? I said, with your support. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go spend a whole bunch of money. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, with your support, I think I can do it. And so we started with habit 1. And when we got to habit 2, what we did was start rewarding people for near miss reporting. Because when you first tell them this, Eric, I promise you, everybody that's listening right now, when you first tell your employees, all right, guys, we're changing things up and we really mean it this time, they're not going to buy into it. Okay. It takes some time. But what's going to happen is someone's going to report a near miss to you. Okay. Eventually it'll happen. Instead of doing the old way of what we call now naming, blaming, shaming, and retraining, okay, because we did that for years. We would, a near miss gets reported. I was trained, Eric. I was trained to treat that just like it was an accident. Okay, let's do that. Let's stop the job. Let's get everybody together. Let's get statements. Let's start writing out these incident reports. Let's do root cause analysis. Let's do all the stuff that we would have done had an accident actually occurred. So tomorrow we're having a stand down with all the employees, and this knucklehead over here that slipped on the ladder, I'm calling him up in front of everybody and say, all right, tell everybody what a knucklehead you are. Tell them how you slipped on the ladder. All right, Mr. Foreman, now you need to tell everybody what we're going to do different so that that doesn't happen again. And then I'm sending the whole lot of you back to ladder retraining. That doesn't work. That's naming, blaming, shaming, retraining. It doesn't work. Now, I apologize. I just lost track. I hope you can edit this.
No, it's fine. We're just talking about how to get safety ingrained in an organization.
Oh, yeah. So yeah. With Empirical, what we did was we did just that. We had a big meeting at every single job site. I went around to all of them. We had this meeting. So, guys, we're going to try something different. We're going to try this new human performance approach to safety. And I really mean it. I want you to do it. So eventually somebody's going to report one. You have to remember that how you respond to failure matters. Okay. If you respond to that the way we've always responded to it, they're only going to report that one. They'll never report another one because they've been named, blamed, shamed, and retrained. So if we, though, you still investigate it, but you can do that quietly for a near miss. There's no reason to make a big deal out of all that. Get the information you need, put it in your system, track and trend it the way that you're supposed to do it. But what we did at Empirical, once the first person did report something, and it was been so long ago now, I don't remember what it was, but we gave him the next morning. We actually, in this particular person, we knew he did not like to talk in front of people. All right. So we made sure that all we did was say, John Smith reported a near miss yesterday. And John, after the safety meeting, buddy, stop by my office. I've got a $25 gift card I'm going to give you. Now, that did a couple of things. Number one, it's a fact that the sweetest words to any human ear is their own given name. We said his name in front of his peers. He doesn't like to talk in front of people, but saying his name in front of people, he likes that. Everybody does. Then we allowed him not to worry about coming up in front of people, but come over to the side and we're going to give him this gift card. Well, we just told everybody out there, hey, he did something that we've asked you to do that you're not used to doing, and we're going to reward you for it. So it wasn't long, and we were getting 2, 3, 4 reports a day. We ultimately had to lower it to $15 gift cards because it just got to be a lot. And fair enough, some of them we realized were fake because everybody wants a $15 gas card nowadays. And we'd have to weed those out. But the real ones, we continued to reward them. And when you, just like, and I don't mean this to sound wrong, but just like when you're training a puppy, when you reward them enough, right, yep, you're going to get the behavior that you want. Once that behavior has changed and it's become just part of the culture, you don't have to give them gift cards for the rest of their life. It's just to show them that we really mean this. Now, what you do with that information and how you respond to the failure, that's going to determine, are they going to continue to report it or not? So Empirical did exactly that. I just started. We had a business review meeting with our biggest client, where I got called up in front of the room to go through the slides, all the safety slides for this meeting. And one of the slides had all of our data on it, right? How many incidents and so on. And one of them was near misses. And I remember this like it was yesterday. There were 3 near misses for that quarter. And I pointed it out on the slide. Look, we had 3 near misses for the quarter. And somebody in the crowd, it was a noise. It was like that. I said, well, you know what? Hang on a minute. I turned around and I asked them to turn the light on in the room. And when the lights came on, you could see the 5 owners of my company sitting there looking at me going, oh, Jesus, what is he about to do? And I told our biggest client, if you think 3 is bad, you're going to be shocked next quarter because that's about to go way up. And their initial response was, oh, my goodness, near misses are going to go up? No, they're already happening. Near miss reporting is going to go up. Okay. And when near miss reporting goes up, I can track and trend that information. And I showed them how I can actually see an accident before it happens if I get this data. They have since, along with numerous other large utilities across the country, PG&E all the way to Florida Power and Light, have changed the way that they do near misses and near miss reporting because of the human performance approach to safety. And so now we get, I don't know, probably 1 a day near misses across all of our jobs across the country. And to be honest, there's more than that. But I'm happy with 1 a day because we can use that information.
So habit number 3 is making safety a responsibility of operations. So some people believe that safety should be the sole responsibility of a dedicated safety department. Why are you making the shift specifically into operations there?
All right. So there's 2 sides to that. The main part of it is if you or I walk out to a construction site right now and we're wearing our shiny white hard hats and our nice, shirts and our shiny steel-toed boots, when we show up, they are already doing things differently than before they knew we were coming. Okay. Sometimes, though, I would walk up to job sites and I would see an employee is in a bucket, let's say, and he's not tied off. Well, wait a minute. You've got a foreman, a supervisor, and 3 other employees here on the ground that saw that long before I did. Why is it they're waiting for me, the safety professional, to come out and correct it? What that does, it turns me into a safety cop. And if I'm the one enforcing the rules, then I become the bad guy. My job is to build relationships with people so they feel safe reporting things to me. If I have to be a safety cop and enforce your rules for you, you're making my job impossible. So the first part of it is operations owns safety because the safety procedures are yours, just like every other procedure. You own them, you enforce them. Now, don't get me wrong. We all have that same stop work authority that if you see an immediately dangerous to life or health, an IDLH condition, we all should stop that. And my authority is no different than anyone else's, though. So why is it that when I go to a job, these other people are just standing around looking? They should have corrected that a long time ago. So we change the focus. It's not my responsibility to come out and correct people on your jobs. Number one, keeps me from being a safety cop. The second part, though, is, safety professionals, when I started in this, there were very, very few people that had ever actually been educated on being a safety professional. Back then, it was usually the oldest person in the company, or it was someone that had been hurt, right? They had been injured, and now they're in charge of safety. Over time, we find that there's a lot of psychological safety involved. There's a lot of other things involved. Versus, we're not just there to enforce rules. We're there to create safe environments. In order to do that, we monitor, audit, review, and advise. That's the four main things that a safety professional should be out doing. Now, does that mean I can't help by making sure that, hey, look, I have some extra gloves in my truck, and if anybody needs them, there they are, or safety glasses or whatever? No, absolutely not. What I'm saying is that when you put the ordering of, the storage of, and the distribution of personal protective equipment is the safety person's responsibility, you're taking away from the things that they're supposed to be doing. And honestly, it would be so much easier for either the tool guy or the foreman or someone else to have that as a responsibility. And that's on the operations side. Let operations do operations and let safety do safety. We just have to define what that is. Smaller companies, yeah, of course, the safety guy keeps the safety glasses with him, not a problem. The larger the company gets, the more people they have, the harder that becomes. So you give that to someone else to do, and let the safety professional be an actual safety professional.
Okay. So habit number 4, it's an interesting one, and you're going to have to explain this to us a little bit, is focus left of 0. What does that mean?
All right. So at the end of the day, it means focus on focus on leading indicators, not lagging indicators. Now, I do it left of 0 because it's easy to visualize. If you picture a timeline has 0 right in the middle. On the right side of 0 are all the things that have already happened. You have no control over those things. The incident, the environmental concern, the whatever, it's already occurred, the safety violation even, you can't stop that. You can't go back and change that. It's already happened. Do you need to track and trend some of that information? Absolutely. But if you focus on those things that have already happened, you're never going to get better. So focus your attention on the things that you can control, like near miss reporting, like proper job safety analysis, like proper hazard risk identifications, and things like that. I've asked this, I can't tell you how many times. So as I grew up in safety, it was probably, late 90s, I guess, when I started getting into managerial type positions. And people would always tell me, okay, Rod, I want you to focus on the leading indicators, not the lagging indicators. Okay, that's what I tell them. Got you, boss, no problem. I had no clue what they meant, okay? And to be honest, if we're all just honest with each other, most people have no idea what that actually means. It sounds good, though. It's very sexy. It's very, the upper echelons of companies love to hear that kind of stuff. We focus on leading indicators, not lagging indicators. To explain how you do that to me then. And not many people
So let me
can.
ask you, Rod, what are some key leading indicators from the safety perspective?
All right. So those precursors I was talking to you about earlier, they're the human performance or the CIF, PCIF precursors. Those are leading indicators. You go out and you see these things and you're asking questions and you're looking for things that haven't happened yet. You're not looking for people that aren't wearing PPE or things that are already occurring. You're looking for things that haven't happened yet. Good quality job safety analysis. We call them a JSA, some call them a JHA, you call them TSTI, whatever you call it. It's the analysis you do before you start work, right, in the construction world. And everybody in construction knows what that is. So those, when you audit those, that is a leading indicator. You can look at the quality of that JSA and determine what is the safety culture on that site. I can hold two JSAs up in front of you and you can look at them, and I promise you, anyone can look at it and say, hey, this crew over here is safer than that crew. Absolutely, because of the quality of the safety analysis that was done. Leading indicator. A near miss occurring is a lagging indicator. The near miss reporting is a leading indicator. The more near misses you have reported, those are good leading indicators. You can take that information and you can put it into a system and you can actually see things from it. Good quality safety meetings. How many times has the construction manager, or all the way up to the president of the company, depending on the size of the company, how often do they attend safety meetings? That's a leading indicator. If your construction manager never comes out of his office and never attends a safety meeting, that's information I need to know. That's a leading indicator that tells me right there that safety is not a very important thing to him, at least during that period of time. Maybe we need to change the time of the safety meeting, or maybe we need to change the way he views safety. One way or another, but that's some of the leading indicators that we like to look for.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you for that clarification. So habit 5 is stop managing people. So some people might argue that managing people is essential for maintaining discipline and order. How do you reconcile that with the idea of stopping managing people?
So let me say it like this. And you had a gentleman on a while back who I've since become friends with, and in the Navy SEALs, they you had Jeremy Beal and his company Radix Services on a while back. The one thing that you have to understand from all levels of leadership, when you get into the super high performing trades like the SEALs, or the clerk at the local grocery store, you cannot manage a person, period. You don't manage people. You manage processes, you manage procedures, you can even manage outcomes. You lead people. Okay, so you manage things and you lead people. If you're trying to manage someone, you're not going to be successful. You have to learn the skill of leadership, which it is a skill. Okay, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't tell you how many resumes I get that tell on the resume, I'm a natural born leader. No, you're not. No, you're not. That would be like me telling you, Eric, I'm a natural born helicopter pilot. That makes zero sense. Okay, it takes a certain skill, something you've learned to fly a helicopter. Just because you're in a leadership position does not mean that you're a good leader. The truth of the matter at the end of the day is there are more bad leaders out there than there are good leaders. However you choose to do it. I personally use the extreme ownership version of leadership. That's what I like. Go get it if you want. It's a phenomenal book. However, if that's not your thing, go find something else. Help learn how to become a good leader. Learn that skill set. Learn how to communicate with people. Learn how to influence people. Learn about humility and ego and all the different components of being a good leader. And when you learn that, go learn it again, because it's never ending. And what we ask in this habit is go learn how to be a leader, and then lead safety with enthusiasm. Because what happens so many times, just by title, people are in leadership positions and they're looked up to through their organizations. If that person says something along the lines of, all right, guys, we got to go to that damn safety training next week, and they treat it like that. And it's that crap the safety department wants. If your leadership is talking like that, you have no idea the how hard you make things just by doing that. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. So we ask that leaders lead safety with enthusiasm. When there's safety training, be excited about it. Even if you're not, be excited about it so that your people will be excited about it. Talk about what's possible in safety. Don't talk about, all the accidents and the this and that. Talk about what's possible. Be enthusiastic, but in order to do that, you have to actually go learn how to be a leader.
Hey, this is Eric, and I'm glad you're listening to today's episode. Quick plug for my book, Construction Genius. It's interesting because we're talking about safety today, and that's actually one of the topics that I don't get into in my book. But when it comes to leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice, if you want something that's simple, effective, hands-on, practical, and no BS, this book is for you. Go out to Amazon and purchase yourself a copy. Get a copy for your leadership team, and it's only $20 a copy on Amazon, and it will transform your leadership if you use and apply what I've written in there. So buy the book. And now back to my interview with Rod. Okay, that's awesome. So habit 6 is stop trying to fix the worker and fix the work. So what are some common misconceptions when you introduce this particular habit into an organization?
So what this boils down to, the Heinrich triangle that we talked about earlier, the behavior-based approach to safety that we have done for years and years. They credit Einstein with
So
defining.
give me the triangle. Just give me the triangle again, just so that we're refreshed on that.
So the Heinrich triangle is it's the basis for behavior-based safety, and what it says. The bottom area of the triangle has a large number. We'll say it's 300,000, whatever. Above that is, say, 3,000. Right above that will be 30. Right above that will be 3. And then at the very apex, there'll be a number 1. The number 1 is the number of fatalities that occur for every 300,000 unsafe acts. So it starts at unsafe acts and it gets worse and worse up to the top 2, which are significant injuries and fatalities. The idea of behavior-based safety is focus on those things, focus on those unsafe acts, and therefore you'll have less fatalities and significant injuries. Mr. Heinrich, H.W. Heinrich, the gentleman that did that study, did it back in the 30s, and his study showed 88%, right? Well, we know now that the data was flawed, but they still started implementing this really hard back in the 90s and having us go out and try to change people and make people, if Eric would just work safer, then our job would be okay. We cannot focus on human behavior that way. What we have to do, so what the idea of fixing the work, not the worker, is. Okay, here's a perfect example for construction. Everybody out there knows, if you're in construction, what fall protection is, right? So a fall arrest system has 3 parts to it. It's a full body harness, it's a shock absorbing lanyard, and an anchor point. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Out of everybody listening right now, I'd like to know, how many of you have ever worn a fall arrest system? Most of you have. How many of you now have ever actually used the fall arrest system and it kept you from hitting the ground? There's only a very small percentage. Those are anomalies. All right, very, very few people that happens to. But we still tie off. Then, if it's so rare, it's more. I've never needed one. I used to build scaffolds. So, most people, even that wear them every day, will never use that harness. Most people that wear a seatbelt will never need it. Yet we do it. The reason we do it is because we have to give ourselves the ability to recover. The ability to recover allows us to create that environment where I can fail and fail safely. So in the habit you're talking about, habit 6, where we're stop fixing the worker. That means stop focusing on worker errors. People are going to make errors. We're not going to stop that. Stop blaming people for errors. When you blame them, name them, shame them, and all that stuff like we talked about earlier, all you're going to do is create an environment where they're just going to start hiding stuff from you. So go out, find the precursors, right? And if you want, Eric, I'll send it to you, and you can put it up for everybody to see what those precursors are, and go look for those things. Those are your leading indicators. When you can start finding those things, correct them, and you can actually see things before they ever happen, because you're looking at things that haven't even occurred yet. And look for those things, find the things that need to be corrected, correct those. Now you're creating environments where the employee fails safely. So that's actually the perfect segue into habit 7. And habit 7 is about finding the sticky and stopping the sift, right?
Okay, so define for us sticky, because you spell that STKY, and then the SIF is SI, and then F as in Frank. So give us what both of those mean.
All right, so SIF is significant injury fatality. And there's also what's called a PSIF, which is a potential significant injury fatality. But let's just talk about SIFs, an actual significant injury or fatality. The top two sections of the Heinrich triangle. A sticky, STCKY, is the stuff that can kill you, STCKY. Now, fair enough, on most construction sites, they're going to change that first word out for a different one, okay? But for this purpose, we're going to stick with stuff. And there have been a lot of studies done in the last 10 years or so. A gentleman that I know, he works for the college in Colorado, the University of Colorado at Boulder. His name's Matthew Hallowell. Dr. Hallowell has these teams that get together, and they've done all these studies. And do you know, and I didn't know this until just a few years ago, that every single workplace fatality that has ever occurred in the history of the country is caused by one thing? It's energy. Every single time. It's some form of energy. Now, there are 10 forms of energy, but energy is what kills people every time. Now, I don't mean a non-job related heart attack, okay? That's different. I'm talking about a job related fatality, significant injury fatality. They're always caused by energy. Now, what we can do is we know what those 10 forms of energy are. So we do our normal job safety analysis that we talked about earlier. And again, it's all part of the system. So we're doing those. We're tracking and trending all the data. Now we get to this point to where we are identifying energy. Now, understand, just by identifying it only. So I'm getting my job ready. I do my JSA, and we stop one more step, and we say, okay, guys, have we identified all forms of energy? And we at Empirical, we put it in a wheel. It's a picture. It looks like a big piece of pizza. And it's got 10 sections on it, and each one has one of the forms of energy in it all the way around. We tell them, go through the energy wheel.
What are those forms of energy? Can you think of them off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I can. So there are, one second here, and I will pull them all up for you. Right there. Okay. So there's motion, mechanical, temperature, gravity, chemical, pressure, sound, biological energy, radiation, and electrical. So those are 10 forms of energy. And the idea with the energy wheel, or, you can do it in a wheel, you can do it in a triangle, I don't care. But the idea is to identify, right now, remember, we're only identifying. Identify the fact that energy is present in your job site. Do your JSA, and then cover those 10 things. Okay, crew that's about to go to work, have we identified all the energy? Let's run through them real quick. Have we identified all the mechanical energy in this job we're about to do? Yes, we have. Okay, temperature energy, yes. What about motion energy? And hypothetically, somebody right now says, well, wait a minute, there's this forklift that's driving on this side road over here. I guess that's motion energy, right, boss? You know what? It absolutely is. Good point. We're going to put that one down, motion energy. Now, we'll go through the rest of them, chemical, pressure, sound, all the way through them. And we ask that same question. Has this form of energy been identified? Everybody looks around and identified. We get through, only that one was identified. So what do we do now? The fact is, just by identifying it alone, you reduce your chance of having a significant injury or fatality by more than 20%. Now imagine if the fatalities in this country, workplace fatalities, dropped by 20% next year. That'd be all over the news. And all we had to do was just identify it. The fact is, more times than not, when people get significantly injured or killed on our jobs, it's because it wasn't identified. Now, we take it just a little bit further, and we use, and actually this part isn't even in the book yet, or it's not in this book, it'll be in the next one. It's what we call a bow tie effect. So if you can imagine a bow tie has two triangles on each side and a circle or a square in the middle. All right. So the circle or the square in the middle is, let's say that's the work as performed. That's the work that goes on every day. Know that work as performed and work as imagined is different. Okay. But that's where those precursors come in. Okay. That's, and I'll send that to you and you can share it with your audience. That's the precursors. So if I had a coin and I started flipping my coin right now, and let's say I flipped it 100 times. After I flip it 100 times, could you tell me roughly how many of those landed on heads and how many landed on tails? Yeah, of course you could. It's 50-50, right? So it's the same thing with accidents. Over time, I can tell you what the probabilities are, right? I just can't tell you what the next flip is going to be. And we know that flipping a coin is a 50-50 possibility. And we do that all the time on our job sites. That's called success and capacity. Heads and tails, success and capacity. Success means I did all the pre-planning, I did all the safety analysis, I lined everybody out correctly, and nothing happened. How often does that happen on our construction sites? All the time. That is what happens most of the time. Then there's the capacity. What capacity is any control that you may have put in place, safety glasses, barricades, lockout, tag out, you name it, it worked. Sometimes it works and you don't even know it. You put a barricade up to keep people out. Something falls. Well, what you didn't know is that on the other side of that boiler over there is that barricade you put up, somebody saw it and they walked around instead. So the control worked. That's capacity. We flip our coin all day and we get that success and capacity and we do it very well. What do you think the odds are that I flip that coin and it lands on its edge? It doesn't land on heads or tails. It literally lands on its edge. It's rare. It's actually 1 in 6,000. Now, that doesn't mean, though, if I hand out 6,000 coins that you flip them and one's guaranteed to land that way, that's 1 in 6,000 per flip. So it's an anomaly. Accidents can be predicted. Anomalies cannot be predicted. Anomalies are what cause significant injuries and fatalities, right? That's what ultimately, the energy causes that to happen. It's an anomaly.
What's an example of an anomaly?
Something that is extremely rare, right? Something that, a workplace fatality is an anomaly. More times than not, we're going to get up, we're going to go to work, we're going to do our shift, and we're going to get success, capacity all day long, and we're going to go home. Most people will never be on a job site that someone dies. Most people will never be in a company that has someone that's killed on a job site. It's an anomaly when it happens. Now, when you step back and look at it from the 30,000 foot view, yeah, you can see that in 2020, the United States, we killed 5,333 people in workplace fatalities. Yeah, you can see that. But if you think about the 140 million people in the workforce, when you think about the number of man hours that went into that, it's a horrible thing. Please don't think I'm taking away from that, but it's an anomaly. It doesn't happen very often. It's extremely rare. Flipping a coin and landing on its edge, extremely rare. Someone being killed or seriously injured on the job, extremely rare. So in our bow tie now, we know what the middle is. The middle is the coin flip. The middle is success and capacity. On the left side of our bow tie, that is our hierarchy of controls. The hierarchy of controls for a safety professional starts off at the bottom of the triangle with elimination. Elimination is the first thing you should try to do. If you're gonna try to eliminate a hazard, you eliminate first. If you can't do that, then you try substitution. If that doesn't work, then an engineering control, or the next would be an administrative control. Your last line of defense is protective equipment. So always use your hierarchy of controls, control the hazards, and we've been doing that. Well, now we get to our coin flip. And again, we've been doing great there, right in the middle, until the anomaly occurs. So the right side of your bow tie is to protect from the anomaly. And what the right side is your energy wheel, or all forms of energy are built in there. So, like I said before, if you just identify that it's there, you will reduce your number of significant injury and fatalities by better than 20%. However, that's just identifying it. In our bow tie model, we identify it on the right side and we go back to the left side now where your controls are. Now control it. So let's say the example from earlier where the gentleman said, "Hey, boss, there's a forklift driving back here." All right, we identified it. Good job. How can we control that? What if we put some barricade up, some cones, maybe a spotter to make sure nobody walks in front of it, something like that? You just controlled that hazard. And if you did that for every one of those forms of energy and make sure it's controlled, I hate to say something's 100% because it never is, but I promise you, if you control every form of energy in your job site, that's as close to 100% as you'll ever get. What that
so it's interesting because with that model there, knowing those 10 forms of energy and then basing your safety procedures and safety conversations around those 10 forms of energy, that is it's a very insightful way of looking at how you're operating on a job site on a daily basis.
Correct. It absolutely is. And when we do that, when we identify and control the energy, that gives you the chance to fail, and you can fail safely. You're going to fail. There will be errors. Granted, most errors are as simple as plugging in a USB and it didn't work, so nothing happens. Some errors are a little bit worse, and you end up with a cut on your finger. Some are a little worse, and you need stitches, and they go all the way up that triangle, right? But if you can identify and control all forms of energy, again, that's as close to 100% safe as you'll ever see. That gives you the chance to fail.
Yep. No, I get that. Let's move on to the 8th and final habit then. Stop trying to influence everyone. So who should I be trying to influence when it comes to safety?
Okay. So in full disclosure, when I went to publish the book last year, it was the 7 habits of a highly effective safety culture. And that when I first wrote it, okay, I started this in 2004. I was the health, safety, and environmental manager for Kellogg Browning Root for Halliburton in Iraq. So I spent 3 years over there building U.S. military bases for U.S. Military and coalition forces in an active combat zone. And that's where culture first started for me, the looking at it. And to be honest, it wasn't safety culture. It was just culture in general, the differences between all of us. And I had just read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so I thought, hey, what a cool idea, The 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Safety Culture. And sure enough, I wrote 7 of them out. The weird thing is the first 5, they're still the same today as they were 20 years ago when I wrote them down. Only 6 and 7 changed, and that's because we went from behavior-based to human performance-based. So when I went to publish it last year, the publisher calls back and says, come to find out the Covey Institute is really proud of that 7 habits trademark they have. And they are, rightfully so. To be honest, I wasn't educated enough at the time in the process to know it's going to be that big of a deal. But it is, I promise you. So I did what any smart person would do, and I made an 8th habit. First, however, I went and purchased the trademark to the 8 habits. Okay, you got to do that first. And then I made the 8th habit. And honest to God, I'm so glad I did, because what I did originally was I told you what needs to change. I never told you how to change it. The 8th habit is how you implement the first 7. So stop trying to influence everyone. The truth is, if you try to influence everybody, you're going to end up influencing nobody. So there are very strategic ways to influence. So habit 5 was about leadership. That is a skill that we all need. Influence and communication are 2 other skills that we have to learn those, and you have to try to learn them. Go learn how to influence people, okay? There's a guy named Simon Sinek, and Simon does a bunch of TED Talks. He has some books out. Go get them. There's one that's called Start With Why. And Simon talks about the golden circle. And in the golden circle, he talks about how us regular folk, we actually talk backwards. When we approach someone to try to influence them, we approach it completely opposite from the most successful people in the world. Because in my years, I've always done that. I go up to somebody, I want to influence them. I tell them what I want, right? How I need to get it and why I want it. The truth is, when you tell anybody what you want first, you're going to lose about 50% of them. They're gone, because they're not as excited about it as you are. Then when you tell them the how, you're going to lose another 50% of that. So you're only down to about 25% of their attention. By the time you get to why, you're only getting such a very small percentage of their attention that more times than not, it's not going to work. If you reverse that, though, and this takes practice, okay? I promise you, you're not going to just do this instinctively. I literally sat in my office and read a script over and over and over again and practiced it before I went and tried it out. And you go in and start with why. When you start with why, then you keep most of their attention, because they understand the end goal right off the bat. And now you have a better ability to influence someone. And the other thing I talk about in that chapter, and this one is going to be huge, especially for all you safety professionals out there. How many times have you been asked to, I don't know, I'm going to make something up, go make sure everybody, wearing their seatbelts, I don't know, something. And you go out and sure enough, see, I used to build wind turbines, and wind turbines are built in the middle of flipping nowhere, all right, in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa. And there aren't human beings for miles except for us. And I want you to drive 25 miles an hour and wear a seatbelt. Yeah, iron workers don't like that. So that was a legitimate problem, right? I was having issues with that one thing. The fact is, at the time, I worked for Siemens, and Siemens had bought a Danish company. We had, for every American worker, we had one Danish worker. And so if you were a project manager, you had a Dane counterpart, a construction manager, everybody all the way down to the people turning the wrenches had a Danish counterpart. Okay. So now I had a Danish counterpart as well, but it was just the opposite, because we're here, we have to follow OSHA. Well, what happened was I'm trying to tell all the American guys, because they know what OSHA says, right? You have to wear your seatbelt. Well, these Danes, they didn't care. They really didn't give a flip about that. And so I'm having a really hard time telling just half the job site you have to wear seatbelts, because I know they're not going to do it, but you have to. What I found out was, and I call it in the book, find the mascot. In every group of people, every set of friends, every job site, every group of family, there's a mascot in every group. The mascot it's usually the alpha personality, but it's the person that everybody else listens to, right? It's grandpa at Thanksgiving dinner, right? He's the mascot. Or in this case, it was a Danish guy named Henrik. And Henrik, I was sitting back after a safety meeting one day, and I was actually pretty frustrated. And I looked over, and Henrik and about 6 or 7 of his Danish buddies were all over, and they were talking in their language, and they were all laughing at Henrik. And I said, well, look at that. And so what I did was I built a relationship with Henrik. I learned about him. I learned that he wanted to bring a 69 Camaro back to Denmark with him. He had a dog named Wag. I knew how he liked his steak cooked. I could tell you what his favorite genre of music was. I built a relationship with him. And then all I had to do was convince Henrik to wear a seatbelt. He convinced everybody else for me. And it works the same with everything else. Find the mascot, build a relationship with one person, and then you only have to influence one person. They'll influence everybody else for you. So that's the last habit in the book, and that's what it's about. It's about, don't try to influence everybody, because you'll end up influencing nobody. Learn the skill of influence and learn ways to influence people.
That's excellent. I really, really appreciate that. Well, I do appreciate you coming on today, Rod, and we're going to put links in the show notes to your book, and we're going to make sure that people can reach out to you. Just tell us a little bit more about how people can get that book and where to find it and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. Actually, the best place is on Amazon. I don't know if anybody out there is a current author or you're trying to become an author, but look, I got it right there. So look at that. Yeah, it's got all kind of highlights in it and stuff. So,
nice. Thank you.
As an author, through my publishing company, if I call the printer and say, "Hey, I need 50 books," whatever, they put me behind Amazon. I'm the flipping author, and I get put behind Amazon. But it's true. And Amazon has been running specials from time to time. But yeah, Amazon is absolutely the fastest and the easiest and usually the cheapest way to pick up a copy. I do speak a lot all over the country. I was in Des Moines, Iowa this morning. I left there at 5:00 this morning to get home to be here for this. And then I'll be in Michigan next week. I'll be in San Diego a couple times this year. I'm all over the place. If you follow me on Facebook or you follow this podcast, you can see where I'm at, and I'll gladly bring some copies with me, and I'll give them to you signed in. But for right now, yeah, Amazon is probably the best way to go.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Rod, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here on Construction Genius. Thank you for your insights and your wisdom around safety.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Eric. It was really a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Hey, this is Eric, and thank you for listening to my interview with Rod. Hope you found it useful. Check out his book, The 8 Habits of Highly Effective Safety Culture, on Amazon. Links in the show notes, so check those out as well. And one final request before you bounce away. If you like Construction Genius, and I'm assuming you do because you're listening to this, go out to wherever you get your podcasts and give the show an honest rating and review. I would deeply appreciate that. Thanks very much. We'll catch you on the next episode.